IB Masters Learning Center and IBMasters.com. Instead, we're going to look at Test 6, Section 1, numbers 7 and 8. 7 reads, it can reasonably be inferred from the passage that Haruni provides Nawab with a motorcycle mainly because what? First, we're going to look at why the wrong answers are wrong here. Answer choice A, Haruni appreciates that Nawab has to work hard to support his family. In the first paragraph of the passage, it's talking about Nawab has 12 daughters, and the salary he receives from Haruni does not even begin to suffice to pay for all his expenses. So he fixes watches, he fish farms, he has an old flour mill, he does a bunch of other stuff to supplement his income so that he can feed and clothe his daughters. But, first off, that's the first paragraph. It does not match any line references. And second off, nowhere in the passage does Haruni say that I'm giving you the motorcycle because I know you work so hard. Answer choice A is gone. Let's slide down to answer choice C. Nawab's speech has been the most eloquent that Haruni has ever heard. So it says at one point in the passage that Haruni was well accustomed to these sorts of speeches. He was used to these sorts of speeches. He's heard these sorts of speeches before, though usually not this florid. Florid means flowery, just like a florist has flowers, and Florida is literally named the land of the flowers. He's saying that it is a great speech, but there's no connection there between him saying it's a florid speech and him giving the motorcycle. And again, there's no line references that match that. So when you're doing these paired questions, you've got to make sure that there's a match with the line reference, and you got to make sure it also directly answers the question. Keep in mind also that an answer choice could be true, but wrong. So is it possible that Haruni appreciates that Nawab works hard to support his family? It's very possible. He might even say that in a different part of the passage. So that answer choice could be true, but wrong. Anyway, when we slide down to answer choice D, Nawab threatens to quit if Haruni doesn't agree to give him a motorcycle. That sounds like an attractive answer, and we're going to look further into that. And answer choice B, Haruni sees benefit to himself from giving Nawab a motorcycle. So now we're down to those two. Let's go to the line references. So when we read a little bit before to get some context, a correct answer to another question is Nawab is emphasizing his own loyalty to Haruni. And he's like, just before these lines, he's like, yeah, all this heavy machinery fell on me. I've earned these gray hairs in your service. I cannot any longer bicycle about like a bridegroom from farm to farm as I could when I first had good fortune to enter your employment. I beg you, sir, let me go. And that was the part just before line 65 that I just read. And so it sounds like maybe he's looking to quit his job. Haruni says, and what's the solution? So it sounds like Haruni is like, okay, that's not really it. He doesn't really want to leave this job. He kind of ignores Nawab's request and says, hey, what's the solution? As Haruni, seeing that they had come to the crux, they had come to the climax, they had come to the main point here. He didn't particularly care. Who's he? Haruni. Haruni's mentioned just before. Haruni didn't particularly care one way or the other whether or not Nawab quit, except that it touched on his comfort, a matter of great interest to him. So it sounds like Haruni's like, yeah, it's going to be a pain in the butt if Nawab leaves me. It's touching on his interest. So as it turns out, answer choice B is your correct answer, and it matches with the answer choice B over here. Haruni sees benefit to himself in giving Nawab the motorcycle. He didn't give him the motorcycle just yet, so we will read on. And then Nawab says, well, sir, if I had a motorcycle, then I could somehow limp along, at least until I could train up some younger man. And then it doesn't get right to it. The crops that year had been good. Haruni felt expansive in front of the fire, so much to the disgust of the farm managers. Nawab received a brand new motorcycle, a Honda 70. So he's like, Haruni's feeling good about himself. Crops have been good. He made a lot of money that year. So even though he really upset the farm managers. Nawab gets this motorcycle. He even managed to extract an allowance for gasoline. So his allowance for gasoline, that's not why he gave Nawab a motorcycle. That doesn't make any sense. And in answer as A is going to be wrong. And what's the solution? Asked Haruni, seeing they had come to the crux, the climax. That's not the reason why he provided a motorcycle. If we look at answer choice D, and we'll read a little more context here, the motorcycle increased his status, increased Nawab's status, giving him, Nawab, weight, so that people began calling him uncle and asking him his opinion on world affairs about which he knew absolutely nothing. So we're probably in a time here, and I believe this is, if I remember, it was India where this story takes place, where maybe only rich people would own such things, motorcycles, and so they think that he's like this rich guy who knows all about the world just because he has a motorcycle. And then answer choice D, he could now range doing a much wider business. Notice the word he, and this is a bit of a grammar lesson, but he is a pronoun. Every pronoun has what's called an antecedent. What's the antecedent of he? It's the word that he refers to or replaces. What's mentioned before? It's talking about Nawab, not Haruni. So Nawab could range further doing a much wider business. So that's not why Haruni provides Nawab with a motorcycle. It sounds like that would be a legitimate line reference to answer the question, but it's not, because it's talking about Nawab, not Haruni. And answer choice D, Nawab threatens to quit if Haruni doesn't agree to give him a motorcycle. That's going to be wrong as well. Thank you for joining us today. If you like this video, click like. You can share it with someone who has trouble with these best evidence paired questions. If there's any question you'd like to see answered from any official PSAT or SAT or ACT, leave that in the comments. I'd be happy to shoot a video on it. Click subscribe so you don't miss anything, and check out our 1-minute videos on TikTok. Have a great day.